This is the second episode of Thorne, and today we're talking about something you've probably felt but couldn't quite explain. Why some people just have something, and why it feels like you don't. You're not loud. You don't force yourself into the spotlight. You try to be polite, thoughtful, respectful. You think carefully before you speak. You don't want to come across as fake or attention-seeking. But then you enter a room, and someone else walks in after you. They don't try hard. They don't overtalk. They just exist. And somehow everyone notices. They get remembered. You get passed by. They say something average. People laugh. You say something meaningful. Silence. And deep down, it stings. Not because you want to be the center of attention, but because it's hard to feel invisible when you've spent your whole life trying to be good, kind, and thoughtful. And here's the quiet truth. Charisma isn't just about being loud or outgoing. It's not about having perfect posture or the right smile. It's something deeper, more subtle, something most people don't realize they're missing, because no one ever teaches it. Today, we're going to slow it down. No tricks, no fake confidence, no social hacks, just quiet clarity on what truly charismatic people do, that you don't, without realizing. The truth is, charismatic people don't try to be liked. They don't chase reactions. They don't beg for approval. What they do is allow space. They pause more than they speak. They look before they respond. They let silence happen. And they don't rush to fill it. And in that space, something strange occurs. People lean in, because we're used to noise, to people interrupting, over-explaining, trying too hard. So when someone enters a conversation and doesn't force themselves into it, they feel different. They're not performing. They're not trying to be impressive. They're simply present, comfortable enough with themselves that they don't need to dominate the moment. But presence is rare. Most of us fidget, overthink, over-explain. We second-guess our tone, our words, our timing, and that energy, that self-consciousness, radiates. Charismatic people aren't perfect. They just don't waste energy trying to be. And because of that, they leave space for others to feel seen. They create a kind of emotional gravity, not by pulling people in, but by not pushing. They don't over-identify with what they're saying. They speak like someone who knows they're allowed to pause, to reflect, to feel. And the more comfortable they are with that, the more comfortable you feel being near them. Most people aren't awkward because they lack value. They feel awkward because they're trying too hard to prove they have value. You speak faster, you laugh a little too loud, you explain things twice, you say sorry when no one asked for an apology. You overthink every detail, because deep down, you don't trust that your presence is enough on its own. And the moment you start trying to manage how you're being perceived, you disconnect from the room. Because now you're no longer in the conversation, you're in your head, you're watching yourself, you're editing yourself in real time, and people can feel that. Charisma doesn't live in what you say, it lives in how comfortable you are saying it, and how little you need from the listener in return. The more you try to be liked, the more tension you create, because people don't want to be convinced. They want to feel safe around someone who's already grounded in who they are. And sometimes, your nervousness gets mistaken for dishonesty. Your effort gets misread as desperation. Your friendliness comes off as insecurity. And you don't mean it that way. You're just trying to connect. But that's the trap. When connection becomes a goal, it turns into pressure. And pressure is the one thing that always breaks charisma. So how do you change that? You stop trying to be impressive. You stop rehearsing your lines in your head. You stop chasing the right moment. And you start getting comfortable with space, with quiet, with the simple fact that your presence doesn't need decoration. You take a breath before you speak. You let someone finish talking, not because it's polite, but because you're actually listening. You don't nod excessively. You don't laugh to fill silence. You give people the freedom to exist around you without pressure, because you've started to give that same freedom to yourself. Charisma isn't about performing. It's about how safe people feel to be real around you. And that safety starts when you stop managing their perception of you. You become magnetic the moment you stop trying to pull, because stillness, honesty, and groundedness create an energy people are drawn to, not out of obligation but curiosity. It's not about always knowing what to say. It's about being someone who doesn't panic in the pause, someone who's okay not being the center, someone who can let the moment breathe and trust that something will land. And in a world full of noise, that calmness becomes rare. And that rarity feels like presence. It feels like strength. It feels like charisma. You've spent so long trying to say the right thing, trying to be easy to like, trying to adjust your energy to fit every room you walk into. But maybe that's not the problem. Maybe it's not that you lack something. Maybe it's that you've buried what made you interesting, under layers of overthinking, pleasing, and self-editing. You don't need louder words. You need quieter self-trust. The most charismatic people you've met? They weren't flawless. They weren't perfectly dressed or socially dominant. They just made you feel like they were fully there, with you, not above you. They didn't rush to speak. They didn't need the spotlight. They were just clear. Clear in their energy, clear in their posture, clear in their lack of need. That's what makes people listen, not because you're loud, but because your stillness is louder. You don't need to be more exciting. You need to stop diluting your presence. You need to stop apologizing for existing. And maybe you don't have to learn how to be charismatic. Maybe you just need to remember who you were before the world convinced you that being yourself wasn't enough.